Now let's bring in my panel. Jessica Tarloff, a Fox News contributor, Ashley Pratt, a U.S. News and World Report contributor, and Gina Loudon, a member of the Donald J. Trump for President Advisory Board. Gina, I want to start with you. You know, after the Bears won the Super Bowl in '86, people thought this could have been the greatest team of all time. What could possibly go wrong? Then Mike Ditka and Buddy Ryan start fighting. The Republicans won everything. They won both sides of Congress. They won the White House as well. And it seems like this civil war is nothing but sabotage for this political party. Do you agree with that?
That's an interesting analogy. No, I don't think this is very big news for most of us who are focused on things like what's happening with Iran, what's happening with North Korea, and the best first year of a presidency in history. So I think most of us who worked hard to elect this president are still focused on those things. We'll continue to be focused on facts and not feelings, and on what we know to be true, which is that this presidency is off to a fantastic start, and we plan to keep it right there.
Well, they certainly got off to a great start at the end of this past year with the tax reform package being passed, which they did promise it July 4th. They promised it by the August recess. They finally got it done within the first year. But when you talk about turnover, Ashley, Ronald Reagan had the most turnover of any president at 17% until President Trump in the first year, who's doubled that at 34%. Is that a sign of a commander feeling his way in Washington and draining the swamp, or is it a sign of disarray?
Yeah, I think it's a sign of disarray here. And typically, you know, Republicans like to use the term Democrats in disarray, but this is very fitting for this administration. I think they are not able to really get their footing. And as you mentioned, you know, toward the end of the year, they were able to get on track with messaging when tax reform was passed. But other than that, you really saw them scrambling around trying to get things done. There were no legislative accomplishments. There was infighting within the party. The party is more fractured than it ever has been. So I think that's something they've accomplished if they were looking to do that. But the most interesting part of all of this is the fact that it is now, what, January 3rd, and we're already at the point of complete dysfunction again. We turned over a new page, you would think, within the new year, but the president is acting still in the same way. Just look at his tweets yesterday. You know, Gina mentioned North Korea and Iran, but North Korea, I mean, he is using hashtag diplomacy in a very dangerous way to try to threaten North Korea. And I think at this point, we need to really look at what's going on here. And he was propping up Bannon before, and now he's saying he lost his mind. In some ways, the president's lost his own mind.
Jessica, I think hashtag diplomacy shows that we are in a social media world.
We definitely are. That you have to say that all the time. But
the disarray, or however you want to characterize this, is this going to derail some things like the infrastructure bill? A lot of the leaders of the Infrastructure Council are members of blue states.
Right.
They're Democrats. They want to put this forward. This is really not a Republican traditional measure.
No.
Do you think this infrastructure bill goes through?
I really hope that it does. I'm cautious to say that I think that it will, because I think that Democrats have shown a capacity or an interest in digging their heels in and resisting at every turn. But I think it would be a really big, solid win for both sides here. I think there are going to be a lot of Republicans who are going to be opposed to it in terms of how much it's going to cost. So they're going to have to agree, essentially, on how you're going to be funding this in the end. But as you say, it's not traditional Republican. This is very Trump. The opportunity to build the entire country up. Right? I mean, nothing would appeal to him more as a real estate person. But I think Democrats are feeling pretty good right now about their chances in 2018. And in a lot of districts, not the ones that you're mentioning where we have blue senators in red states, but the rest of the country, their constituents are telling them resist, resist, resist. And it'll be interesting to see if they can get it together to save people like Joe Manchin and Heidi Heitkamp and Claire McCaskill, who's probably going to have the closest race of anyone in 2018.
4 congressional leaders meet on Capitol Hill to avoid a government shutdown. And Gina, when you're talking about the fact that after that meeting, they came out with good news that they weren't going to shut down, can you imagine a store owner and his person that's running the store, when you call and ask them, how are things going? And the only answer he has is, well, we're going to keep the doors open tomorrow.
Just for one day.
That exceptionally low bar by this Congress. I think it's why they have in the latest Rasmussen poll a 13% approval rating, which is just below the 14% of Americans who believe in Bigfoot. So there is within that crazy factor. Can this president actually work with this Congress when they're in their bar now is just to keep the doors open?
They better work with this president, because this president has demonstrated now what he can do to an economy. He has totally revitalized the economy. We all know the numbers. They are tip top. Every Democrat and every Republican should be thrilled with the decrease in regulation, with the tax bill that this president got through, with the stock market, with the unemployment, the consumer confidence, the list goes on and on. So to in any way try to diminish that is naive at best and dishonest at worst. And
but
so, yeah, there's every
himself,
incentive.
Gina.
There's every incentive. I let you finish. There's every incentive for this Congress to continue. The biggest strategic mistake of this entire year was the Democrat Congress vote, or the Democrats voting exclusively against the tax package. That was the biggest strategic mistake. It will cost them in the midterms. Mark my words.
The government shutdown, if it does what happened, there's been 7 since 1976 in the Budget Appropriations Act, Ashley. It's never been a case of one party that owns both sides of Congress and the White House. So if they do, it seems like this will be political suicide for the Republicans. At least only history will tell how that plays out. But are the Republicans in trouble? You're losing someone like Orrin Hatch, and you might have Mitt Romney coming in, who is an adversary and against a lot of what President Trump has to offer.
Well, I think the Republicans are set up to lose huge in 2018 because of the president, and I think their alignment with him, as we saw in Alabama. Now, again, we're seeing some different patterns here. We saw Virginia, we saw Alabama, and all of this can be seen as a rebuke of the Trump presidency. And myself, as a moderate Republican, see some problems here because of the fact that the Trump agenda goes too far for some people, and then his behavior, which tends to be erratic, and he's showing no signs of changing in the new year, can be a problem for lawmakers who might be looking to work with him. And to Jessica's point earlier, it would be great for Democrats if the infrastructure bill got passed. Do they want to hand him a legislative win? Probably not, because at the same time, when they see how his behavior is affecting people and how they see his demeanor, they're not willing to work with somebody like that. So he needs to start switching gears and act, but he needs to act as though he is president of the United States, and he has yet to be able to do that. It's fine that he passed tax reform. It's great that he did that. The American people will benefit from it. But the problem is he doesn't stick to messaging and he doesn't act presidential. So unless he starts doing that, I don't think he's going to see many more legislative wins, especially in an election year.
Well, one thing we've seen a lot of certainly are investigations. And Jessica, when you talk about investigations, Paul Manafort is now suing Robert Mueller and the Justice Department, claiming the DOJ violated its authority by hiring Mueller for the Russian probe. Basically, he's saying he committed a crime, but because it was out of Mueller's jurisdiction, he shouldn't be prosecuted for it. This sounds insane to me. I don't know.
It sounds like Paul Manafort, which is fundamentally a little insane. And Donald Trump and his whole team could have known that before they hired him, because he's been doing this for decades. It's very well known in campaign circles who Paul Manafort is, what he was doing in Russia and in Ukraine, and just what kind of fellow he is overall. The DOJ is going to dismiss this as a frivolous suit. I think that's what it is. I'm not a lawyer, but I can read really well, and that's what it looks like to me. It's just more indications of how hard everyone in the Trump orbit is sweating the Mueller probe. And I think that has a lot to do also with Donald Trump's ire towards Steve Bannon today for the comments about Don Jr. and Jared Kushner and Paul Manafort taking that meeting at Trump Tower, saying that it's treasonous to have done that in the first place, and you call the FBI when someone contacts you with that kind of information. So Paul Manafort, he's doing his thing, and I know he wants to get to the Hamptons every fourth weekend or whatever it is, but I don't think it's largely going to make a difference in what's going to happen with the probe.
I don't think the Hamptons right now are the place to be.
It's a little cold.
No.
Bermuda, yeah, but it was a little colder than usual for you guys too,
So we got
right?
the bomb cyclone coming. I'm not even sure what that is.
I don't know what it is either, but I'm very afraid based on what Twitter says.
Conflicts are igniting around the world. Thanks all to you ladies for joining the show.